DC. We've previously launched things like USB cell batteries and hold a dozen patents on mobile devices. I invented a folding keyboard for Palm. We're early stage in our energy company. We've spent about £1.3 million developing a distributed energy storage system to power all your DC loads and enable grid shift. We up for a DEC £2 million trial. In assessment for that, we've got patents granted on our smart DC technology. Interestingly, Tony Fadell, the iPod inventor, also got a patent granted this month in a related area. So we're doing something which is potentially very significant and going to impact all of our lives. We're raising some funding at the moment alongside our grants. Essentially, one of our key products is called Maslow. What Maslow does is it powers all your essential need. In Hurricane Sandy, when the power went off, you had nothing. But in our system, you can keep the lights, electronics, communication, media, security online, because they're all DC. Our system stores energy overnight in a battery placed in the home or the office, or stores energy on demand when triggered by excess wind in the grid. That power is distributed over a DC network to your DC lights and electronics via USB sockets. And we've invented a USB multi-volt socket, which is set to become an international standard under Intel's USB PD, such that by 2020, we think 50 billion devices will power via USB in the same way phones and tablets do today. What the system does for the grid is enable a network of benefits for twinning to wind or storing on demand or essentially storing for the utility off-peak for peak shift. And essentially we shift in the home all peak load DC light and electronics off-peak to a low tariff time. And the grid, the system in aggregate is available as a bulk storage system to use for grid needs. And that's one of the clever things we've done with our software and technology, and is why DEC's interested in piloting this under a trial. We've been doing pilots already with TSP funding. We're supplying into Siemens via Low Carbon Network Fund. We're doing trials in Suffolk, where we're essentially doing mesh network monitoring over the energy sites being used. We're also doing some on the continent with certain partners. We're a certain way through our development. We're moving now from an R&D phase into an expansion phase of doing more pilots. We're seeking additional funding to mirror funding we may get from government sources. We've got patents granted, and we're looking at channel partners to scale up our activity. More information available on Moixa.com. I think to summarize what we've been doing is, because everything today is DC we care about, renewables are not very good. Storage doesn't work unless you couple it with DC. The duty cycles are too expensive. If you make storage available to the end user to do several things, like provide resilience if the power goes down, to daily shift so the utility saves money, to enable duress pricing, to enable the storage to be used on demand for local network mitigation, or say, for example, wind twinning. And in China, for example, 17% of wind is curtailed. Then actually storage becomes a rational part of grid design. And we think distributed storage has greater beneficiaries than bulk storage if you couple it with DC. And what's interesting is the speed of change of DC devices. The number of times we charge and connect with power is growing so exponentially. By 2020, about 45% of daily demand in a house is actually DC-related load. It's very interesting that they're standardizing under USB to become multi-volt, which means you never have to carry an AC-DC adapter around in the future, which wastes a lot of energy. So we're displacing that by having a USB which is smart. USB means everything DC is connected to the grid. And what's quite interesting, if you look at a DC view of the future, is actually all of that will be smart. It's already smart, it's connected to the internet. So by 2020, the thing which makes the biggest impact to grid is managing the growing and most important essential demand of DC. All the washing machines or the AC load changes very slowly, a 12-year cycle. And that's generally being fixed, and the grid's pretty good for that. But the DC side is basically left, is most essential for consumers, is what people need when power goes down. It's the thing that if you solve, gives convenience to the end user, gives efficiency to the network operator, gives, in coupling with storage, an asset which can be used. More information available at moixa.com. I look forward to talking to you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.